the iconic photos from that. Some of those meetings actually happened at my great-grandfather's home, Pastor Isaiah Sanders. And so I was just embedded in the civil rights movement. I always knew that I wanted to be a lawyer. But then as I got older, it seemed like a lot of the big cases had been settled. So we had kids could go to school with anybody, integration, had happened. Women had, a lot of rights that they didn't have before. So it seemed like a lot of the big issues were settled. And then now, only to find out that a lot of the things that were important to me when I first, started middle school and high school, all those things are back on the table. No matter what you think about a woman's right to choose, that was decided 50 years ago. It's back on the table. Voting rights. I tell people all the time, I am older than the right of African Americans to vote unencumbered in this country. What do I mean by that? I'm 58 years old. I know I look good, thank you. I saw your face. But the 1965 Voting Rights Act, 57 years ago, I, as a black woman, could not go into a polling location and vote without somebody giving me a literacy test. Making me say how many jelly beans are in that jar, what they call poll taxes. Black men had the right to vote long before black women, but as a black woman, I'm older than the right to vote, and that blows me away. And the fact that we are still debating voting rights and voting suppression, and people that, look at what they did down in Georgia when, they closed all these polling locations, what we did in the largest city in the state of Wisconsin. We only had 5 polling locations open. Wauwatosa had more polling locations than the city of Milwaukee. I did not think that we would be fighting some of these same issues. So, yeah.
Okay, should we brighten the mood a little bit? After all your experience of being on the radio, would you like to start your own radio show?
So, having done 2 radio shows at one time, I used to do morning drive and afternoon drive for a period of time. I've talked about, and a lot of people have talked about going to syndication, to doing a national show. And so that's somewhere in host their own shows on that platform. So it's something that I consider. Yeah.
And why have you done radio for a while, and do you think you'll continue doing it?
Similar to some of the stuff that Senator Taylor said, and she didn't say this, I'll say it. Lena and I actually went to college together. We met because we were actually protesting, well, it was around Nelson Mandela, but getting companies to divestiture, that's the word I'm looking for, to divest in South Africa. And so we were at UWM's campus, and that's how we met, actually, because we were involved in those protests. So I've always been somebody that was aware that, I had a voice, I had a responsibility to use my voice to help others, to help myself, to help my community. And so it's just one of those things that, you always wanted to do. So that's one of the reasons why I started calling talk radio, is because I wanted to, people have always said, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. I always wanted to have a say. I always believed that, you should be involved. And the reason I continue to do talk radio is because I think it's just important, number one, that women's voices are out there. And if you've looked at talk radio traditionally, it's been a lot of men, particularly in the Milwaukee market. And in terms of black women, it's been very few. So what you guys are doing, to Senator Taylor's point, amazing, because there are not a ton. But I just always thought I want to be someone. I do a fairly good job of taking really big issues and breaking them down into a way that anyone can understand. When I was in school, I had a teacher. I wrote this paper. It was an amazing paper. It's like, this is an A paper. And I got the paper back, and my teacher had just marked it all up and bled all over the paper with a red marker. And I was like, what? A little confident, because it was an A paper. And she said, Michelle, I see you as someone who will talk to people all over the world. And I love the look you had. That's the same look I had, like, whatever. And she said, I need you to use words that everybody can understand. Some people have $10. The majority of people have at least $1. So bring those words down a bit. I'm glad, you got all of that on display. But bring those words down a bit so that everybody that you interact with can understand what you need them to understand. So there are people that I listen to, like, does anybody know Michael Eric Dyson? I love Michael Eric Dyson. But his words are so big that half the time you lose the message because the words are so big. And you are looking on your phone to figure out what that meant. So I just always wanted to be able to communicate with people, get information to the community, and figure out how to be of help.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So besides Milwaukee, where have you lived, and what's the biggest difference between those places politically?
I've lived in about 7 states. When I first came to Milwaukee, I came because I was married. My husband worked for Miller Brewing Company. Prior to getting married, I had already lived in Kansas, and I was raised in New York, and spent every summer in Birmingham. But I've lived in California, I've lived in Kansas City, I've lived Missouri. So I've lived in a number of places because his job, we traveled a lot. And what was the second half of that?
What are the biggest differences?
First, and I've lived in Georgia. First things I always tell people, because I'm not from Wisconsin, and it took me forever to claim Milwaukee as home because I was always like, I'm leaving, I'm leaving. But the minute you go somewhere else and you ride in 5 and 6 lanes of traffic, you appreciate Milwaukee so much. The cost of living, even though I know a lot of people struggle with housing insecurity here, it is still a relatively affordable place to live. And the idea that, like, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and in Wisconsin, period, we have just about every athletic sports team you could have. We are 5 minutes from the Brewers, the Bucks, hockey. It's like crazy. So if you are a person who likes to do things, it really is a cool city to live in. And the other thing I'll just quickly say is, I've said this to people, if you're someone who wants to make a name for yourself, who wants to be a player, who wants to be a part of things, this is a town that's relatively easy, at least the way I see it, to get engaged. People will bring you in. People will open the doors. People are not so territorial that they push you out. So those are the things I like about the city.
What are some similarities?
In some places, the racial segregation, the situation with African Americans in housing. Housing for black folks is abysmal in this town. During the banking crisis, we took the hardest brunt of it. And, quality education tends to still be a concern. I don't care where you go. If you don't have the money to get your child into certain kinds of schools, you really have to fight to make sure your child gets a good public education, because just like here in Wisconsin, particularly here in Milwaukee, there are probably 4 or 5 really good public high schools, and everybody's fighting to get their child in King, in Reagan, in Riverside. There are 2 others I can't think of right now.
Go to my year.
So those kinds of issues, though. So I think the fact that race is still an issue, I don't care where I go, is some of the things that are the negative sides of that.
And do you have a passion for running for a political office again?
So I actually did run for political office. I live in the 6th Senate District. And I forgot, maybe that was 2020. But I was really frustrated by a number of things that was happening in our district. Some people will know that I was very vocal when Mayor Barrett announced that they were going to move a slaughterhouse on 35th and Capitol. And I lived at that time in the Sherman Park area. And I was vehemently against someone putting a slaughterhouse on 35th and Capitol. And, I got roasted in the media, Mark Bellin. It was just so much. We need jobs, we need jobs. And I was like, first of all, tell the truth to the community. When you tell people that 250 jobs are coming to this community, but 230 of them were already occupied by the people who work for the organization. So I didn't like the way I was hearing people lie to the community about the possibilities just to score political points. So I decided to run for office because the senator at the time, I didn't feel like she was being very vocal, and this was like the third big thing that had happened that finally was like, okay, enough is enough. And so I got in at the very last minute. Anybody that's ever been in a campaign, you need money, you need time to plan. And it was more a statement for me that I just wanted to keep people on their toes. But would I run for office, big picture? Probably so. I think it's important. Somebody has to step up and do it. The thing that I feel bad, though, is that, this guy decides he wants to run for office. People will make it their business to find every little thing he's ever done that's wrong, every little decision that's questionable, and they will just strip you down. So what it takes to run for office, is a lot. But I'm super proud. I read and talked about on my show, a young man ran for office. He is the mayor of Earl, Arkansas. He is 18 years old. 18 years old. Yes, that's crazy. So he graduated from high school in May. He became the mayor in November, and he's in college. So you got to run for office.
So back to what you said before, do you feel like things that people have done that's negative overthrows what they've done that's positive in politics?
I think most people that come to politics come for the right reason. You got to have a certain type of personality to run for office. There's a certain level of type A. I don't know if everybody understands type A personality, but you got to really believe in yourself, really believe I can sway people, get people to see things my way, change the outcome of a vote or a decision. So you got to have a certain amount of, just a little bit of ego coming through the door. But I think that's too often people get caught up in the trappings of being an elected official because the power is crazy. It is. You get access. I was just laughing the other day, an email came and it said you were invited to the White House Christmas reception. And my name is mistakenly on the leadership's email, so everything that comes to leadership comes to me. And I'm like, really? I get to go to the White House to the Christmas reception? You get to go to the White House for the Super Bowl party? I mean, it's like crazy opportunity. And there are some people, they forget why they came. And you start doing like a lot of stuff that's just not in the best interest of people. You're just trying to keep your seat. You want to continue to get invited to hang out with the president or, have special access. And so there are times when the negatives can certainly outweigh the positives. But I'm going to just say this real quick. The days when you realize that you thought of a bill or you saw something that was really, really wrong, and you said, we should introduce legislation to change that or make that better, and that bill passes, when you realize I had a hand in creating law, best feeling in the world. You like, oh my God. And, I'll just say this one, and, I know you said you wanted to lighten the mood. Good luck with me. It's a grimy story, so I won't do the details, but the whole concept was that a member of law enforcement should not be able to have inappropriate physical contact, because I know we got some babies in here, physical contact with a person in custody. And I came to Senator Taylor and I said, this should be a law, because Wisconsin was one of only 5 states that didn't have a law in the books that said that an officer cannot have physical inappropriate contact with a detainee. Senator Taylor said, go for it, do it. We introduced it, no brainer, right? Everybody's gonna come on board. Law enforcement fought us tooth and nail. Seriously? Seriously? So it came back around second session. We were able to get the law passed, and there is a horrific case that just was talked about in the media in another state in which a law enforcement officer took advantage of a number of women of color, and had that person been in Wisconsin, there are actual legal repercussions, because in the state of New York, the officer said it was consensual, the jury believed it, end of story. This young 18-year-old girl that these officers attacked, she had nowhere to go. And so because we were at the table in the room, we were able to change it so that no person in Wisconsin could ever have that happen to them, and they didn't have legal recourse.
When you felt like giving up, what motivated you to keep pushing?
So the question was, if you've ever felt like giving up, what motivated you to keep going? What pushed you? Two things. Number one, when I graduated from high school, I found out that I was about to have a child. I was 3 months pregnant when I graduated from high school. So having someone else depend on me, basically most of my adult life, I didn't really have an option not to keep going, because if I failed, my son didn't eat. If I failed, my son didn't get, a good education. He didn't get access. So that was one, if I could just be honest, was my family. But the other thing, and this is where knowing your history is so important. I've always understood, because of my grandparents and my parents, what it meant to be Black in America. The struggle, when you think about how we came to this country and the things that people had to endure, we, by all accounts, are not supposed to be here. When you think about the abuse and the beatings and, the conditions that we lived under. And so every time I think it's really hard, I think about what it must have been like to be alive in 1865 or 1840 or 1600, 1700, when people were being brought here and living in the way that they were. I suck it up real fast.
All right, thank you for that. Do you have any closing comments?
Watch you grow. I've been super proud, like a mom on some ends. I've seen kids come and go, and congratulate you all, first of all, for wanting this for yourself. Understanding how it changes things and how being a part of stuff like this. My son, he used to be on Teen Forum, and when he graduated from college, that was done on Channel 12. When he graduated from college, he went to go work for ESPN. And it was the experience that he got as a high school student doing this kind of stuff every week, that when he submitted his resume, he was already a step above his peers. The things that you all are doing now are putting you a step above your peers right now. So I just want to say to the people that have made this possible, thank you. To the parents who have supported your babies, thank you. And to the folks that work hard to make sure that Radonna's vision for this has sustained. So that's it.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time today.
I thought y'all was going to have some hard questions.
Thank you for constantly and always informing our people.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time today, and thank you for constantly and always informing our community. Next, we have a gentleman who has been through the Center for Teaching and Entrepreneurship programs, graduated from college, and now sits on the board of directors for the organization, Mr. Ryan Gray.
Good afternoon, and thank you for coming. So why did you get involved with CTE as a young person?
Good afternoon, and you all are doing a great job, by the way. Aren't they doing a great job? Sometimes sitting in front of people can be very nerve-wracking. How I got a part of CTE, is that what your question was? So I was at the Afrofest, I believe it's called, well, when we had it. And me and my mom was just walking, going somewhere in the festival, and we came across a table. And one of the women at the time, Miss Tayi, she said, you know, do you want to have a business? And, you know, I said, well, I'm too young. Well, you're never too young to have a business and all these things. And so I said, well, I think I'm interested in. I got the information. And once I got the information, me and my mama looked at it, and we were very intrigued at what we saw. And so once we went to CTE for the first time, the first face we saw actually was Miss Radonna. And for those who know Miss Radonna, she had a bright smile, and she had her very energetic personality. And from there, we already knew, you know, that's where we wanted to be.
What college did you attend?
I'm glad you asked. I attended the Alabama A&M University in Huntsville, or what we call Normal, Alabama.
And how was that experience for you?
That experience was amazing. So I had the opportunity to be a part of a historical black college, university for us. Very good, very rich with culture. Contrary to belief, all black people are not the same. And so with that, I had to see so many people that looked like me, but were not me. And different personalities, different cultures, different background, different experiences. And I was able to learn from many of them, and even understanding the culture of an HBCU. If you've ever been a part of it, or even been on the campus, nothing compares to it. So the rich education, but the rich experience as well, that really gives you the assurance of a person, and even being black in America. So it was a great opportunity, great experience.
What life skills did you learn from that college?
Life skills I learned from that college, I would think, is to be unashamedly black. I've had the opportunity to intern in some of the most prestigious companies before I actually got hired to where I am now. Wells Fargo, other companies here. And in many times, I was the only African American there. And that was just an intern, so there were no other employees that looked like me. And sometimes when you're the minority in a situation, it can be a very intimidating experience. And sometimes you say, am I doing enough? Am I not doing enough? Am I enough? And where I am, is that okay? And so being in college, it taught me you are enough, you are educated, you have the experience, and show them what you're worth.
And why did you come back why did you come back as a CTE? Why did you come back to CTE as an adult? Sorry.
Great question. So to give you a little bit of background, when I started CTE, I was 12 years old. Later that year, I opened my own business called Blessings on Enterprises that I had at least for 5 to 6 years. And within that business, I was selling Christian merchandise. So I helped with a Christian board game that was like a Monopoly, and then we also developed other merchandise. And there we went through many churches, and we were able to help churches provide a fun and exciting way in providing information to what they taught their members, which was the gospel of Jesus Christ for their congregations. And I wouldn't have had that experience without CTE. I was able to go through many places, even in the country, and talk about my experience as a young entrepreneur. I was featured in a magazine within the Midwest as the youngest entrepreneur at that time because of CTE. I was able to have good speaking skills because of CTE. And so how dare I receive so much information and then not come back to Milwaukee as a professional and not give my experience and not give my ability to help the next generation.
What is your current career position?
My current career position, I'm currently at Quad. I work within business solutions as a project coordinator. So my job in so many ways is just to make sure that things get done. So as of right now, one of our clients, my job is to make sure that as it pertains to the marketing aspect, which is my background, is to make sure that the things are executed in the most effective way possible. And so sometimes the things that are on the billboards, the things that are on the buses or what have you, my job is to make sure those things are there. And if it's not, then my job is to ask the tough questions, why and what happened to the timing that we weren't able to execute this in the time agreed.
Do you have any closing comments?
Oh, that was quick. Okay. My closing comments would be to you all, you three, and that is you can do whatever you want to do. Whatever you're starting to do right now, it may look totally different. So when I started CTE, I was in the Christian business aspect at that time. But now I have at least 2 businesses under my belt that are totally different than what I started with. And that is graphic design and interior design. 2 totally different things, Refined Graphics and The Great Collective that me and my wife are the co-founders of. And it's different, but the start that I had at CTE got me to where I am today. And so all I tell you is never, the Bible says in so many words, never despise small beginnings. So where you are right now is very critical and very crucial to understand that it's taking you to where you want to go. It's okay if you don't have all the answers. It's okay if you don't understand where you're going, but just take one step at a time. Don't beat yourself up. It's okay to breathe. I bought my first home at 25, and I remember thinking my credit wasn't good enough. I mean, it was good, but I was just nervous and frustrated and all of these things. And I spoke to someone, and she said, "You can breathe. You're putting too much on yourself. Breathe, everything will be okay." And that's what I want to tell you. It's okay to have so many goals, but don't be so consumed by the next phase in life that you forget to breathe and enjoy where you are. Because the mere fact that you're doing what you're doing is a success. You are a part of Stanford. You're a part of a basketball organization. You're a part of making sure that these ladies know what they're doing. I think they're doing an amazing job. What do you think? So I say that to say is, you may not even know what you're going to do in the next 10 years, but be okay with where you are now, because where you are now is a great start.
Thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate all your advice. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to bring to you the executive producer of the Hustle and Grow Show and president of the board of directors for the Center for Teaching Entrepreneurship, Mr. Douglas Kelly.
Good evening, good evening, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Whew. We're finally here. First, let's give the Hustle and Grow team a nice round of applause. Also, let's give Lisa K Catering. She provided the food. So the cupcakes that are on the tables was actually done by her youth culinary education program. The young kids did the cupcakes for us, so let's give them a nice round of applause. So, I got a long list, I'll make it quick. First, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Milwaukee County of Equity, PNC Bank, and a new sponsor, the Buckner family. Probably a lot of you are wondering who in the is this guy across from that queen. This is actually Frank Buckner, who actually co-founded the organization with Radonna in 1990. Yes, we reunited with the family earlier this year. He left us money in his will. Yes, he had passed in 1995, But the will became activated once his wife died, and his wife died in December. And so the sons had called me and gave me the great news, and so it was really good to know that he felt that way about the organization. So Radonna met him in 1990, and they started the organization. And over the years, you know, CT has had its issues. We've had our struggles. But I'm here to say that, you know, we're back in stride again, as one of my mottos are. But there's no I in team, so I would like to take this time to introduce my board of directors. Mary, Executive Director of Granville Bid. Ryan, Project Coordinator at Quad Graphics. Diana, Professional Coach and Retired Executive from Miller. Charles, I think Charles just left. Charles, Attorney at Law. Armin, Entrepreneur Coordinator and Instructor at MATC. James, Director of Cave Enterprise, which includes the Burger King franchise. Jay, Director of Treasury from Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance Company. And last but not least, Bob Burney, our current interim Executive Director for CTE. And the one thing I love about him, he is a retired professor from El Verno College. 2022, we have accomplished so much, and sometimes with companies and corporations, growth can be an issue. And I think we have experienced that, considering we were at a standstill for quite a few years, regrouping ourselves from the passing of Radonna Rogers. But in 2022, we have touched or instructed over 200 kids. We have been into 5 schools. Let's see if I can remember. Nova, McDowell, Holy Redeemer, Story, the Aspire program, and we did a short 3-week course at MATC, which was fun. Come in January, we will be into probably 8 to 10 schools. So we have been blessed with grants that we have been giving by Greater Milwaukee. I always have to look for Bob for my answers. Greater Milwaukee Foundation and the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. So, you know, we are blessed of the things we've been able to accomplish, considering where once we were. So, what can you do? Pretty simple and easy. We need contacts into schools, companies, corporations. We need instructors. I'm probably going to be short, 1 or 2 instructors who can go out and teach our curriculum. And my great retired professor does a great job of having taken all the stuff that Radonna has had in the past to go forward. So he does a great job of doing that. Of course, we can always use funding, donations, but we also can use your time, your talent, and your treasures. So anything that you can do to assist us, it would be great. You can see myself, Bob, or any of the board members. What's ahead for us? 2023. We created an event in 2019 that was called the Big Hat Soiree. And we did it in 2019. That was in honor of Radonna. It's her event where we give homage and honor her. Because if you know Radonna, there's 2 things she liked to do. She liked to wear big hats, and she liked to dance. So we had the first one at the Marcus Center for Performing Arts in the Bradley Pavilion. And of course, our second one was scheduled in May of 2020, but that didn't happen. So we finally got the second one rescheduled. It's going to be May. It's on our website, May of 2023, and it will be back at the Bradley Pavilion. And it's a great setting if you haven't been there because it overlooks the river. And if you go to our website, you'll see the picture of all these, I think 80% women who got on their big hats and everything else. And it was a great time. So, and we also will be honoring a entrepreneur. We have not gotten to that process because we need to get past this date. But our first one, we honored the developers of Sherman Phoenix, was our first honorees. So I thank you all for coming. Make sure I got all my notes. Bob, did I miss anything? Of course I did. Bob Burney, ladies and gentlemen.
This is one of my favorite moments. Standing next to Douglas, because we work so closely together. And this afternoon, I heard so many inspiring stories about people that believe in Milwaukee and believe in young people and believe in their families. And Douglas is someone that I wonder how he does it. Because we've talked about being blessed by so many things. I believe that the Center for Teaching Entrepreneurship, okay, that's Douglas. He's always working. The Center for Teaching Entrepreneurship and Milwaukee and Wisconsin is blessed to have Douglas Kelly. And every now and then, Douglas will talk about himself. You notice, he hardly says a word about himself because he's so concerned about what can I do to help other people and young people. So here's my little story. So I've already told it once this week. When we met with people from Strive, Douglas is not talking about himself. And I said, well, Douglas, introduce yourself and let people know about you. So here's the Douglas story. Douglas told me, this was a few years ago, he says, when I meet somebody new and I go to a new organization, the first thing I talk about is CTE and the need for young people to develop their entrepreneurial and their money management skills and to believe that there's a good future for them. And then Douglas said, and then people will say, well, okay, that's nice, but what do you really do? And Douglas says, well, I also am vice president of sales for WNOV, and I also am a real estate consultant. And I said, well, that's what I do. And the reason that I talked to you and mentioned that I am the chair of the board of directors for CTE is because that's who I am. And I want you to know first who I am, and later I'll tell you what I do. So Douglas, thank you so many times for all the effort and dedication that you place in CTE and helping youth in Milwaukee.
Thank you. You know what? I forgot one other board member. Jerry, vice president from Chase Bank. You weren't here earlier. One other thing, I ordered so much food. I made sure that they provided us with to-go containers. So please help yourself. The to-go containers are over there. Make sure you please take those brownies. I've had 2 and they are very delicious. And my board members, do not run out the door because we got to do a quick breakdown of this room. So don't run out the door. But again, thank you all. Have a happy holiday, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year. Thank you.